Hello, this is Harry Margolis, and I want to welcome you and thank you all for joining us on such a beautiful spring day. We will try to make this really interesting to keep you inside for another 45 minutes or so, and then let you be free to enjoy the long holiday weekend. I'm joined today by Steve Weisman, who is of counsel to our law firm, and he's an incredible talent. He was an estate planning attorney for many years, but is, I think, more interested in teaching and in writing and in lecturing. And so he, as I said, he's now of counsel to our firm, but he's also, for the last 20 years, been a senior lecturer at Bentley College, where he teaches estate planning and other topics. And he's a prolific author, having written many books about estate planning, credit protection, and more lately about how we can protect ourselves from scams. And he has the website scamicide.com, which you should all take a look at. In addition, he's been a radio personality and a widespread speaker throughout the country. So before I turn the dais over to Steve, I want to say that we will be holding questions till the end, but you can type them in at any time. There should be a place on the right of your screen where you can click and type in the question. And when Steve finishes his more formal address, we'll turn to the questions. So without further ado, Steve, the audience is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, these are the times that are trying people's souls and their wallets. And we're really at a time of unprecedented scams. I guess you could say there's been a pandemic of scams as well. And the scammers, they are scam artists. They're the only criminals that we refer to as artists, and they're always taking advantage of what concerns people. They've got this knowledge of psychology that Freud would envy, and they're able to manipulate all of our emotions. You know, one of the things I kind of, one of my catchphrases is trust me. You can't trust anyone. And that's part of the problem. And you'll see with so many of these scams we're going to be talking about is they may appear to be trustworthy. You may be getting what appears to be an email or a text message from even the Centers for Disease Control or the World Health Organization. And if you click on links in some of these messages, you can end up downloading malware or providing information to a scammer. So it's pretty bad right now. Federal Trade Commission just recently reported that in the first 9 days of April, they received complaints of losses of totaling $7 million, and they're expecting that the scams related to the coronavirus, if they continue at this rate, will reach more than $100 million by July. And in fact, unfortunately, you know, again, one of my mottos is things aren't as bad as you think, they're worse. It is actually going to hundreds of millions of dollars, and partly because the Secret Service just this week issued a warning to the various states regarding a crime ring in Nigeria that is doing a massive coordinated attack on the unemployment system. And we'll probably mention that a little bit later today, but already that is costing us millions of dollars. So let's talk a little bit about the relief checks, the stimulus checks, because this is one of the things that the scammers have really focused in on. And at this point, many of you may have already received your check. And one of the things is you don't have to do anything. So there have been a lot of scams in which people were contacted asking for information, social security number, your bank account, and where you could provide this so that your check could be sent. And in fact, the federal government is not going to be contacting you. So anytime you get an email, a text message about the relief check, it's going to be a scam. The one contact you will get, and this is critical, you will get a real actual letter 15 days after your payment under the CARES Act has been sent to you, either directly electronically to your bank account, or they started sending out paper checks on May 13th in that fashion. And the reason there is to confirm that you've got it. And that actually is a really, really good thing, because there has been, it's kind of been a perfect storm of this increased risk of identity theft that we're getting into now, because the relief checks are tied into your most recent income tax return. So if you filed your 2019 income tax return, the check, your stimulus check, will be sent according to how you would ordinarily get your refund. So if you provided the IRS with a bank account, they will wire it to that bank account. If you did not, they would send it to you in a paper check. So what's happened is the delay for income tax filing, the deadline, has been postponed until July 15th. So what scammers are doing is they will have, many of them will have your social security number. How'd they get it? Well, often they get it from various data breaches that are occurring. And so this personal information is gathered in massive data breaches. And at that point, it gets sold on a part of the internet called the dark web, where the bad guys buy and sell goods and services. And so what they're doing is they are getting that information, and they're filing for, particularly for people who haven't filed their 2019 return. And the IRS is already saying that the numbers of people who still haven't filed are quite large. So the bad guy gets your social security number, files a 2019 income tax return using your name with a phony W-2. They not only may be able to get a refund tied to the phony tax return, but because it's going to be the most recent tax return filed, they're also going to be getting your CARES Act stimulus check. So the lesson there is, hopefully many of you have already filed your income tax return, but if you haven't, you should do it as quickly as possible. You know, the criminals are amazingly creative, and a lot of the times they will take what were old scams. Like there's one called the pump and dump, and this was something the Securities and Exchange Commission has been warning us about for quite a while. And this is something that's happened in the past. It used to be you would get a fax. Anyone get any faxes anymore? But you get a fax, and that fax looked like it was intended for someone else, but it came to you and it tells you about a stock that is about to soar. And who wouldn't like to get a stock that's about to soar? And how this works is it's thinly traded penny stocks. These are low cap stocks, and they're stocks in legitimate companies. And what the criminals do is they buy stock in these legitimate companies at a low price that is relative to what the price should be. But then they lure people who are not doing their research into buying this stock, and that pumps the price up. Well, when the price gets really high, that's when the bad guys sell their stock. Ultimately, the truth comes out that they don't have, in this case, the coronavirus cure or treatment, and the stock plummets and people lose their money. So this is something that the SEC is particularly warning people about. And pump and dump's been with us for a while. As a matter of fact, there was a very sophisticated scam that was going on a few years ago, and it involved Ukrainian hackers and American stockbrokers. And what happened was the Ukrainian hackers were sending out emails, and they got the email addresses from a data breach that they caused at JP Morgan Chase. So they took those email addresses and they sent out letters telling people, luring people into buying stocks, penny stocks that the American stockbrokers had already purchased. And interestingly enough, they got caught. They had made millions of dollars, but they got caught. And at the trial, there was testimony from a wiretap in which one of the Ukrainian hackers asked, Why would Americans buy stocks just because they got an email telling them that this is a great stock from someone they don't even know? And the other Ukrainian hacker said, well, Americans buy stocks like we drink vodka. So the lesson here is you've got to be wary. You've got to do your homework when it comes to any kind of investments. And that leads us into the phony coronavirus cures. There are a lot of them out there. In fact, the Federal Trade Commission and the Food and Drug Administration are sending out cease and desist letters. And it's kind of like that carnival game whack-a-mole, because as soon as one pops up, another one and gets knocked down, another one pops up. But they've now sent out 170 letters to various companies that are touting all of these oils and colloidal silvers. And even there was a letter that went out yesterday from the Federal Trade Commission about a company that was touting freeze-dried horse milk as a cure for the coronavirus. Bottom line is there are no present cures or treatments for the coronavirus. So what do? Again, you've got to be considering the source. Who are you going to trust? Well, you may trust who? Not who's on first, but the World Health Organization and the Centers for Disease Control. So you want to go to trusted sites, but particularly be wary of emails, text messages, websites touting these phony coronavirus cures. But we also are looking to help each other. We're all in this together. So one of the things that we're looking at is coronavirus charities. And this is something where it's very interesting. A lot of us are on it, and if you're not on it, I suggest you go to it and enroll in the federal do not call list so that telemarketers cannot call you with commercial opportunities. So here's the thing. Even if you are on the do not call list, there is an exception for charities. Generally speaking, and I'm on the do not call list, and if a call came to me that was offering some kind of business opportunity or really just about anything, I know it's a scam because they're not comporting their activities with the do not call list. But when it comes to a charity, charities can contact you. And they may email you, they may text message you, they may call you on the phone. And the thing is, whenever you get an email, a text message, or a phone call, you can never be sure who it is. Even if your caller ID says it's the American Red Cross, you don't know if it's the American Red Cross because there's a very simple technique that the scammers use called spoofing. And spoofing allows them to manipulate your caller ID so it will look like it's coming from a legitimate source. So what do if you are charitably inclined? The first place to go is a great website called charitynavigator.org. This website is free and it'll tell you a couple of things. First of all, it will tell you if the particular charity that is contacting you saying they can help in regard to the coronavirus is legit or not. And sometimes the names may sound legit and it may be just a little bit off from what is a real charity. So this can help you know which charities are legit. The other thing they will do is it will tell you how much of that so-called legit charity, how much of the money that it takes in goes towards its charitable purposes, and how much goes towards paying of salary and administrative costs. So charitynavigator.org is a great place to go. But time to scare you a little more. And this is phony coronavirus websites that are infected with malware. One of the most popular websites right now, and we see it on the news a lot too, is the interactive map created by Johns Hopkins University, which shows where the coronavirus is and what the numbers are. The problem is that there are phony websites. There are even some phony websites that are made to look like the Johns Hopkins University website that they have. And here's the thing, who can you trust? Well, can you trust Google? And you really can't necessarily trust Google because, again, some of these scammers and cyber criminals are amazingly adept, and they're adept at algorithms, including the algorithms that are used by Google and other search engines to rank a particular website. So merely because a website appears high in your search doesn't mean that it is legitimate. All it means is that the person who has set up that website is able to use and manipulate the algorithms of Google and others to make sure that they get a high rating. So you may get an email that takes you to a phony website. You may go onto a search and look for it. And here's the problem. The problem is sometimes even by going to a particular website, if it is infected with certain types of malware, and that can be ransomware, it can be keystroke logging malware that can steal the information from your computer or your phone and use it to make you a victim of identity theft. So you want to, again, make sure you're on legitimate websites. You also want to use the most up-to-date security software. But going back to the things aren't as bad as you think, they're worse. Even if you have the best security software, it's always going to be at least 30 days behind what we call the 0-day defects. These are the latest discovered vulnerabilities that are exploited by the bad guys. So you want to make sure you keep your security software up to date with the latest updates. This is something that was a problem with Equifax, and with Equifax, their major data breach was totally their own negligence because they did not update a type of software they use called Apache, even though the update had been available for a couple of months. So if you do go to a website, you may want to check out and make sure it's legit. And there, Google has a safe browser transparency report, and it's an easy part of Google you can go to make sure you're on the right website. There's also a website called Whois, and it will tell you who actually owns that website. And I remember doing a piece for New England Cable News, and we looked at a Walmart website, and it looked exactly like Walmart, except the website was owned by a company or people in Singapore, and so it really was not. Now let's go on to phishing with a PH and spear phishing. Spear phishing is more targeted phishing. Phishing is the #1 way that data breaches and scams occur. And what happens is, we know the obvious phishing email. These are the mass emails that lure you to provide personal information or to click on a link. But the thing is, you're going to see something that is dear customer. It isn't specifically targeted to you. I remember once being at a destination wedding out in Las Vegas, and I got a phishing email, and it looked like it came from Citizens Bank, and there was a problem, and I had to click on the link to find out what was wrong with my account. And obviously I was concerned until I remembered I don't have a Citizens Bank account. So when you get something from a company that you know that you're not doing business with, you know that it's not legitimate, and you're not going to click on that link or download that attachment. The problem is spear phishing. Spear phishing is when the particular email has been specifically tailored for you. It may be, sometimes it's a shot in the dark. So right now there are a lot of Netflix phishing emails, and that's because they know a lot of us are watching a lot of Netflix these days. But even then, it may be from a company you've done business with. It may have your name in there. It can have all kinds of information, including, I know a real cybersecurity expert who fell for one of these because it had the last 4 digits of his social security number in there. Well, the reason they had that is because they had his social security number from a previous data breach. So what do? Again, it's trust me, you can't trust anyone. First of all,
Steve, yep. I told you about when I almost became a victim of a spear phishing. incident where I got an email that looked like it came from Amazon saying that an Apple iPod had been sent to someone in Austin who I had never heard of, who from my account, and there was a number to call. So I called the number, and the person had a lot of information, including, I think maybe, the last four digits of a credit card I had that had recently been canceled. So it sounded very legitimate, and but then over time it became less legitimate. She started asking for various things that I needed to do because of this supposed security breach,
including probably send them a gift card.
Right. So she wanted me to go to some store to get some gift cards, and I said, well, that's when I realized it was a scam. And I said, aren't you Amazon? Everything's supposed to be done online. I got to go to a physical store. and eventually she just hung up on me.
But yes, and that happens. And in fact, that specific type of scam with Amazon is, again, very, very common because so many of us are using Amazon. I was looking at my credit card bill this month, and it looked like every charge was to Amazon. So yeah, that kind of information for a spear phishing, you tend to trust it because it seems legit, but you immediately have to be skeptical. So what do? What you do is you discount the phone number that you find in that communication that you get. You don't click on the link. You go to, if it, in this case, like with yours, Harry, you go to Amazon customer service from the website itself. And here, some of these scammers are so good. Let's say it comes from, and I've seen this happen, there's a problem with your credit card. You flip over your credit card, you'll see the 800 number for customer service, you call that, but make sure you dial it correctly, because what the bad guys have even done is they have bought 800 numbers with it maybe a digit off. So if you merely misdial, you may be thinking you've got the real one, and you end up contacting the bad guys. You know, some of the others,
they're incredibly resourceful, it sounds like, and I wish they would be great if they could turn that entrepreneurship to something good.
Well, you know, it's funny you mentioned that, because the smartest person I ever met, before I taught at Bentley University, I was teaching in the state prison system, and there was one of my students was a guy named Dale Tuttle. He was a professional chess player and bank robber, and he was absolutely brilliant. He used the alias Andrew Goodman so he could sign things A Good Man. But I once asked him, thinking he might go into security, what he was going to do when he got out of prison. And he said, well, you know, the way the economy is and all, I need to, you know, rob banks for 2-3 more years and then I'll retire. So some of these people are just incorrigible. You know, the CDC is not going to be coming to your door. And this is something we've also seen, is scammers posing as CDC workers. They come and they may have hazmat suits on. They are not going to come to your door. They're not going to be offering tests. Also, as far as the government offering money, we've seen these coronavirus grant scams, and they usually come through social media. And what we're seeing is that you can get amounts of up to $150,000. You just need to pay certain fees. Well, first of all, there aren't any grants for personal purposes, only for public projects. And even there aren't any fees for filing the application. But once again, the scammers prey on our vulnerability. Another thing I saw, and this is as far as drive-through tests for testing for the coronavirus. And in particular, I saw one recently in Louisville, Kentucky, where they set up, and they contacted a church, the scammers did, posing as the CDC, saying they wanted to set up the tests there. And the people came, they paid for really ridiculous nothing tests. So if you are going to have a test, and I know the CVS is now going to be doing tests, always confirm through the local Department of Public Health whether that testing site is legitimate or not. We're also seeing updating of scams, like I saw one, a phony COSTCO stimulus check. Now, companies are trying to do their best, And one of the things that they're doing is maybe they're giving bonuses out, but they are not giving stimulus checks. You see this in social media or text messaging. And how do you know if it may be legit or not? And the interesting thing is, well, you're not going to know. So what do? Whenever you see something from a company offering, and this could be even a coupon or some kind of stimulus check or whatever, it will always show up on the company's website. So ignore what you get through social media or text messaging, even if it's being forwarded by friends, because your friends may have been tricked. Go to the company website, and that's where you'll find out if there are any legitimate coupons or benefits they're giving. The grandparent scam has also come back into the fore. This is where the elderly grandparent, or like me, the not so elderly grandparent, gets a call in the middle of the night, and there's been a problem with your grandchild, and they need you to wire money or send, like Harry was talking about, gift cards. That's always, scammers are the only ones that are asking for gift cards for payment. But some kind of emergency where you have to send funds. And this is the kind of thing you have to be wary of. And also, where do they get the information? How do they know the names of our kids? How do they know what the grandchild calls their grandparent? I was a big fan of the TV show, The Big Bang Theory. And Sheldon used to call his grandmother Meemaw. And I actually knew someone else who used that same name. Well, how would they know that Meemaw is the name for the grandmother? Because they've probably seen it on social media. So you have to be careful what you post there. As far as the grandparent scam, you always check out before you wire. You don't send gift card money, and you're going to be okay. A lot of us are working at home now, and this is something that really does open us up to all kinds of problems for ourselves and our companies. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to make you a prediction right now. 6 months from now, we're going to be hearing about incredible data breaches at various companies, and they came because of exploiting vulnerabilities of people working at home. They get hacked, and through their accessibility into the company's network, they get at the company. So you want to, first of all, be careful about ransomware. This is where your computer, you unwittingly download some malware that locks up, encrypts all of your data, and unless you pay a ransom, generally in Bitcoin or some other cryptocurrency, within 48 hours, they destroy your data. It also can be used to be the company you're working for. You can be unwittingly sending that to the company itself. The biggest thing you can do here is, along with security software, along with not clicking on links unless you've absolutely confirmed they're legit, even if they're from your company, always confirm them, because that's what they're doing now. They're sending out emails that appear to come from your HR department. So you back up everything, you use security software. You also may want to use, if you can, a separate computer from that of what your kids might be using, so that they're not downloading malware. You want to use a virtual private network to encrypt any communications. You also, as far as you've got your passwords, but use dual factor authentication, whereby you're going to get a code whenever you go onto something protected with a password. If it's coming from a different device that you don't usually use, they will send a one-time code to your cell phone. And our routers are very, very vulnerable. The FBI issued a warning last year about the fact that hackers are attacking our routers. And one reason is a lot of us don't change the default passwords on those routers. So definitely do that. There's also scam phone calls from MEDICARE. And they're offering a wide variety of things for COVID-19 kits or coronavirus packages. And they start asking for your social security number or Medicare number. Well, they're using that to make you a victim of identity theft or to file false claims with Medicare. And again, you got to be wary of spoofing. Spoofing is where your phone, your caller ID may look like it's legit, but it isn't. And as far as the spoofing goes, you've always got to be wary, and Medicare is not going to be calling you on the phone. I mentioned the unemployment scam, and this is that big scam, hundreds of millions of dollars that has already been lost to Nigerian scammers. And here's the thing, they may have filed a unemployment claim on your behalf. So what happens? How do you find out? Well, you may get a communication from your state unemployment office. And this is where you know that someone has filed on using your name, your social security number. Well, first you report it. You report it back to the unemployment office. But you're at risk for further identity theft. And this is because they already have, the bad guys have your social security number. So if you have not frozen your credit, you want to freeze your credit with all 3 credit reporting agencies. You also want to get a copy of your credit report from each of the 3 major credit reporting agencies, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, to look for any problems. And here's some good news. Glad to bring some good news. The 3 major credit reporting agencies just this week have decided that they will now be providing, instead of the federally mandated once a year free credit report, you will now be able to get a free credit report from each of these credit reporting agencies once a week until next April. So this is something you want to take advantage of. We also have phony coronavirus text messages. And this is something where you may get a text message, appears to come from the CDC or something else. And here's one that really is the latest. In Massachusetts and many other states, they're doing contact tracing. So if someone has been infected with the coronavirus, when they're being treated, they will be asking for contacts, and they may have given information to be able to contact you. And you very well may get a text message from the local, the state health department saying that you have been exposed. Now, here's where the scam comes in. If it's a scam one, they will have a link for you to click on and download. That will contain malware. If it is legitimate contact tracing, the only thing that text message will tell you is that you're going to get a phone call from the State Department of Health. And if you do get a phone call, such a phone call, they will not ask for personal information. They won't ask for your social security number. They won't ask for your Medicare number. They won't ask for any bank account information. You know, a lot of us have also been getting great comfort from our dogs, and puppy scams have been with us for a long time. And you know, the comfort animals, well, people are buying dogs, and the scammers are there too online, selling non-existent dogs. Some of them actually say they're AKC certified breeders, which is pretty interesting because there are no AKC certified breeders. The American Kennel Club will register litters, but there are no certified breeders. So you really, you shouldn't buy any dog sight unseen. Medicare, as far as calling, they're offering phony kits. Medicare is not going to call you. Netflix, a lot of us are watching Netflix, so we also are getting those Netflix phishing emails. Sometimes they need to confirm our information or our credit card. Here again, you can't trust it. Go to Netflix on their legitimate website. The bottom line is, and there are others too, there's a lot of scams coming around, going back to the 2017 Powerball, the biggest Powerball in history. Mavis Wansick, a woman here in Massachusetts, won it. And she is now apparently giving free money out. Well, she isn't. Bottom line is, I want to close and open up for questions in a moment, because a lot of this is pretty scary. When I was teaching in Walpole Prison here in Massachusetts, one of my students was doing 2 consecutive life sentences, which is pretty interesting, which means that when he died, he would start his second life sentence. And I said to him, oh, you know, I was always curious about it. He said, me too. He said, so when the judge sentenced me to 2 consecutive life sentences, I looked up at him and I said, how do you expect me to do that? And the judge looked down and said, just do the best you can. So ultimately, That's what it comes down to. Doing the best we can, not reacting immediately and emotionally to scare tactics, and just being a bit skeptical, taking care of ourselves, and we can get through this.
Thank you very much, Steve. As I think one of your slides said, an ounce of protection is worth at least a pound of, I guess, protection, at least an ounce of knowledge. So thank you for providing the knowledge, and I hope that will help us protect ourselves, and if we spread the word, help protect other people. We're going to answer questions now. I have one from email, and then I'm going to turn the question reading over to Beth Cohen-King, who will read from whatever questions that you all have typed in. Remember, you can, on the right, you can click on a place which I believe says questions and type in your questions. But before we get to that, let me pull up this question that we already received. And here it is. So Steve, can you speak to the legal responsibility of third parties that unwillingly or unwittingly assist scammers, such as banks and money transferring sites? Are they accountable to assist with any information for those working on behalf of those who have been scammed? Is there a legal mandate or any legal expectation? So whether it's a bank or a Western Union or anything else.
Yeah, very interesting. As a matter of fact, the big Nigerian crime ring that is doing the unemployment compensation scam, they're they file the applications, but they're not having the money sent to National Bank of Nigeria. So they have what are called mules, and these mules are people who either wittingly or unwittingly are allowing their bank accounts to be used to initially receive the money, and then they forward them out. And one place this is happening unwittingly is what they call it's work at home. You've got a work at home scam where someone has told you all you're going to be doing is you're going to receive payments and then you wire them out. Well, you've got to be skeptical about that because you are becoming an accomplice to the crime, and people who are involved in this particular one are risking legal liability. Perhaps the biggest area, and you kind of alluded to it with Western Union, wiring money, gift cards, but particularly wiring money has always been a favorite of scammers because it's really impossible to get back. And a lot of scammers would have people go, their victims, to Western Union to wire money. And the Federal Trade Commission brought a major action against Western Union, who not knowingly, but kind of closed their eyes to the fact that they were being used for scams. And so we are seeing that federal law enforcement is making a greater effort to bring action against companies and individuals who are participating, maybe knowingly, maybe not so knowingly, but should have known in these scams. And so you're seeing places that could be wiring. Banks are being held more responsible for wiring money. Western Union has already paid a huge, huge fine and had to change some of their business practices. So it was a great question. And yes, there are great efforts being made to deal with these third parties that get involved.
Great. Thank you very much, Steve. Beth, do we have any questions from the listeners?
We do. Okay, so here I'm just reading them in order here. What if I go to a site that was announced on the Jimmy Kimmel show, for example, and give money?
Well, I'm a big fan of Jimmy Kimmel, but I'm always going to assume that that Jimmy is joking. So I know Jimmy's not a scammer, but I'd still be a little wary of getting money from Jimmy Kimmel. The thing is, you may find phony websites that are taking the posing as celebrities, and this has happened a lot. So Oprah Winfrey is a primary example of that. Very, very generous, has done a lot of things for people. And so the scammers set up websites, send you communications that appear to be coming from Oprah. You can't trust it. You've got to do your research to make sure any kind of site is legitimate. And of course, if it's too good to be true, even if it's from Oprah, it probably isn't true.
But it sounds like if it was on the Jimmy Kimmel show on TV, that kind of scam didn't happen, but still probably worth checking out the charity as Steve recommended, checking out any charity.
Okay, so this is just more of a comment, but maybe you can elaborate on it. Someone also wrote, also U.S. Census scammers.
Oh, big time. This was something that started going on just prior to the pandemic. You know, this is a year of the census, and there are two primary scam areas in regard to the census. The first, and one that all of us are susceptible to, is you may be getting having someone come to your door saying they're a census worker and asking you to fill out and provide them with information, or you may get an email or a text message. Well, the census is going on now. I would not give it to any information to anyone who came to the door, because even if they have an ID, you can't be sure it's legitimate. The best place to go is, you know, we all got notices with the online place to go for the Census Bureau, and make sure that you're on the legitimate website. That's the best place to go. But here again, you got to make sure that you're going to the correct website, and that's where you may want to check it out with the Whois or Google to make sure you're on the right website. The other thing is, they're not going to be asking for bank account information. They're not going to be asking for your social security number. The other thing is, there are a lot of part-time jobs that are available, and you'll see emails, text messages, also where you can apply. And you know, if you apply for a job, you do have to give them your social security number. The only place to apply for a job with the census is at the U.S. Census Bureau's website. So if you limit your contact with the census to the website, you're going to be fine.
Okay, so how do you get rid of a phony tester who does it over and over?
You can block phone numbers from your phone. So depending on what service that you're using, you contact them, and you'll find the procedure for having you know, repeat offenders taken down. Problem is that even when you do that, it's that whack-a-mole again. They're going to come up with another number to contact you. So you can do it. It'll make you feel good, but you'll still be getting phony text messages from others.
Okay, and then I work with the elder population, and a lot of them have been scammed during this crisis. Are there any resources I should give them? I know some of them won't even get their money back.
Yeah, you know, the problem is prevention is so key when it comes to protecting yourself. And you know, Harry and I did a webinar some months ago about protecting seniors from scams before we even were looking at the pandemic. And there are companies that you can hire that will be able to monitor and control the spending of an elderly relative, and they can have certain credit cards that will block certain kinds of payments and monitor payments. So I think those are good to do. As far as getting money back, the unfortunate thing is, while the Federal Trade Commission and the U.S. attorneys will make efforts, most of the time, unfortunately, they're not going to get money back. So the best thing you can do is educate consumers so that they know what to look for and what to avoid. It's one of the reasons, you know, scamicide.com has been out for about 11 years, and I do a scam of the day. When I first started 11 years ago, I didn't think I'd be able to find a new one every day, and I have, and we continue to find them. So, you know, maybe it's a little self-serving, but you'll find on scamicide.com, you can subscribe and get an email with the latest scams, often before much of the media is warning people about them, and there's information there. And again, self-serving, my book, The Truth About Avoiding Scams, you can find what things what are the telltale signs, and also what kind of programs and protocols you can put in place. But in particular with seniors, you want to get some protection from robocalls so that they don't get hit with these kinds of automated scams, and make them more knowledgeable and skeptical, and maybe monitor the spending.
And just to add on to what you said, the webinar that you did a while back on protecting seniors on scams is available on our website too, so they can use that as a reference point as well under our webinar recordings. That is actually all the questions that I'm seeing right now.
Very good. So if anyone has any further questions, thank you very much, Beth. But if anyone has further questions, they can send them to firm@margolis.com, and we'll forward them to Steve, or if we can answer them ourselves, we will. Steve, do you want to provide an email as well?
Yeah, actually, the scamicide.com, if you go there, there's email as well that you can contact me.
Great. And if you have any estate planning questions, if you go to askcarrie.info, we answer questions for no charge there. And Steve, thank you very much. This was terrific, and I hope we'll help protect some people.
Hope so. Glad to do it.
Okay. Everybody, enjoy the long weekend and the weather.